Hey there, my name's Amy Martin, and this is my book, Wild DFW, Explore the Amazing Nature Around Dallas-Fort Worth on Timber Press, and it was released last July. Um, Many thanks to Britt for inviting me here. I wish I could have been there in person, had a medical issue here at the household. The first third of the book is natural history and ecology of North Texas. And plus, it's got some really neat topics like geology, weather, nature at night, citizen science, and making your yard into a nature sanctuary. Britt is mentioned several times in this first section of the book. The middle section is a field guide to over 100 species of plants and animals. And there's lots of good field guides out there. And so I tried to make my version of a field guide full of really interesting tidbits that you can use to spice up any party conversation. So there's interesting stuff in there like that armadillos float, or that they can inhale air in such a way that they sink to the bottom of the creek or river and they can walk across, which is how they got here from Mexico. And then the final third is 25 eye-opening hiking adventures taken with the people who know these places the best. So here are some of my favorite photos from Wild DFW. This is the most beautiful wetlands in North Texas, up there in McKinney. This sweet little thing became the mascot, unofficial mascot of the book. He or she is in Technicolor on the cover and appears more times than any other animal icon. My publishers are from Oregon, and so they were just fascinated with armadillos and alligators and bison. These little flowers, wildflowers, were just Lilliputian in scale, and I was completely enchanted with them. This is a prairie remnant in the middle of Plano. I thought this photo was just hilarious because it is giant great blue herons perched in trees like they're songbirds or something. This is an example to show how the Trinity River in Dallas can be quite beautiful. You have to wonder who won the fight here over these yoppin berries. Be sure to visit Dogwood Canyon in March when the beautiful dogwoods are in bloom. Oh my, what big teeth you have. And to think that the alligator gar gets many times bigger. Absolutely stunning wildflowers, the best displays every spring and fall, and not too shabby in the summer either. So North Texas is a land of drama, and I don't mean this stuff. I mean the drama down below and in the past that creates the natural treasures like the limestone escarpment that forms Cedar Ridge Preserve, or the cuesta upon which Sherry Capehart Nature Preserve sits, and both are adventure chapters in Wild DFW. Or the dark, rich soil of the Blackland Prairie in places like Park Hill Prairie, or the sandy soil of Bob Jones Nature Center, both of which are also adventure chapters. We are in a pivotal place on the continent. Ours is no ordinary landscape. It's surprisingly dynamic, full of contrasts and convergences, both in the land and the weather above. North Texas is impacted by continental drift, a planet in constant movement, widening, making epic rifts, or forging or merging and forging mountain ranges and new continents. When a continental craton came wandering across the present Atlantic Ocean and rammed into current North America, it shoved mountains along the East Coast all the way across the South and into here. Most of those mountains now reside deep underground, or they're just sort of like the hills of Alabama, but some manage to stay above the surface. This is a phenomenon called the Ouachita Fold Belt or the Ouachita Orogen. That's why The Ouachita, Ozark, and Chickasaw Mountains go east-west, and all other North American mountains go north-south. But it was the inland sea, the Western Interior Seaway, that truly shaped us. It sliced North America from Canada all the way to the Gulf. And it's also called the Cretaceous Seaway, since that's the epoch that it dominated. Some geologists call the Dallas area the Cretaceous coast. It's the land of limestone. Limestone, go back here. It's the land of limestone. And Cretaceous comes from the Latin word creta, meaning chalk. To quote from the shores of an ancient ocean chapter in Wild DFW, over epochs, water repeatedly rose and receded with epic climate fluctuations and tectonic events, creating aquatic environments from deeper than land skyscrapers to vast shallow seas and swamps to sandy shores. Layer upon layer of deceased microscopic calcareous sea creatures turned into Cretaceous limestone. In Eastern DFW, we call that Austin chalk, since we're just the far north extension of it. Over time, that soft white rock decomposes into hard black dirt, something they're still studying. The black gumbo of Eastern DFW is essentially swamp mud. The limestone of Tarrant County, being more towards the ancient ocean shore, is much harder due to the presence of bivalve or oyster shells. Also from Wild DFW, University of Texas at Dallas geosciences professor Robert J. Stern writes in the highly recommended Geology of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, quote, beneath the surface, limestone bedrock holds echoes of an ancient inland ocean in which monstrous sea lizards swam, end quote. These aquatic reptiles include mosasaurs, like the hungry guy in the prior photo, and plesiosaurs, whose long necks evoke the Loch Ness Monster. One of the continent's oldest mosasaur fossils was found near Chalk Hill Road off I-30 near Grand Prairie. Dallosaurus turneri, sort of a petite missing link species, was named for the discoverer, the city, and Van Turner, who discovered the specimen, and it's now in the Perot Museum. Is that totally cool or what? So we don't have dinosaur fossils in North Texas. We have marine fossils, including turtles and fish, and lots of sharks. The cartilage doesn't fossilize very well, but their teeth do, and you can find them all over a section of Post Oak Creek in Sherman, now a very hot fossil hunting site. Another thing that adds to the area's dynamic nature is that it's off its rocker. You can see that in Scooter Smith's magnificent graphic here. In general, things get harder, higher, drier, and older as you go west. Check out that tilt. Older layers are almost always lower. So like the Texas craton at the bottom left, that is billions of years old. At some point, East Texas collapsed or sank or something, and all these layers of geologic time tilted. And you can see a piece of that East Texas basin at the bottom right that got kind of squished all this way. And there between them is the Ouachita Fold Belt I mentioned before. So we've got 8 or so geologic layers through the 4-county area: Collin, Denton, Dallas, and Tarrant. So, that should have been, yeah. And so when I say North Texas, I'm only referring to these 4 counties. Look carefully when you're driving along I-30, and you'll feel these layers of time as they change. So going west from Dallas, the hard Austin chalk that is around downtown and much of the county. That's there in the sage green on the kind of middle right. And that sinks into the softer Eagle Ford shale of Irving and Grand Prairie, the purple belt. Then the flat woodbine sandstone of Arlington in the light green, and then back up into limestone again, the yellowish layers there. It's subtle, but it's epic. So the time frame, however, is definitely epic. On the eastern edge of DFW, the Austin Chalk is 67 to 130 million years old. On the west side, the limestone is more like 300 million years old. And it's all determined by the bedrock, but not this bedrock. Each of those geologic layers you just saw gives rise to a different kind of soil. Oops. That soil gives rise to a unique plant community. And that plant community determines the insects and the wildlife that are going to live there. That adds up to rampant diversity if you know what to look for. And that's something that I hope Wild DFW can help you to do. Slicing all of this up are the many forks of the Trinity, especially the West Fork, which traverses all of these geologic layers. The Trinity River goes over much harder limestone and shallower soil in the west, making than in the east. So that makes the West and the Clear Forks very different from the Elm Fork and the main stem of the Trinity, something that the Dallas powers that be are just starting to figure out because they've been trying to force the river in Dallas to be something that it's not. When the ancient ice sheets were melting, all of that water had to drain somewhere. The Trinity River was once many miles wide. So there are alluvial terraces alongside it, consisting essentially, to quote Rob Denkaus, the Fort Worth Nature Center, ice age gravel. It's the blue line in the middle of the, flanked by brown in the middle of the Austin Chalk section. So the Trinity adds one more layer of time to the geologic mix. Also, there were rivers in ancient times that are no longer around. And those also left some belts of alluvial sands, which accounts for some of the post-oak savanna areas in Dallas County. So doesn't all of this epicness and drama below make everything above it on the surface just that much more interesting? So let's turn to the present day and merge those ideas with the idea of edges and ecotones. The Blackland Prairie is atop Austin Chalk and Taylor Marl, and that takes up almost the eastern half of Dallas DFW. Before settlement, trees were mainly limited to ravines and riparian corridors where the wildflowers and the bison could not reach them. Trees reassert themselves in the cross timbers, which is a mosaic of post oak and blackjack, forest and prairie patches. That arises mostly from the woodbine sandstone. Then going west, there's prairie again, known as Grand Prairie, Fort Worth Prairie, and other names. Going back to the eastern edge of all of this, the piney woods and deep sage green eases into the sandy post oak savanna in yellow, which is scattered trees and post oaks, obviously, and grasslands. On the far western edge of Tarrant County is the western cross timbers in lighter sage green, stretching towards Abilene. That's what the Palo Pinto Mountain State Park is in. So it seems like an orderly step down from trees into Western Plains, except plop right in the middle of all that Blackland Prairie is the Great Trinity Forest. 6,000 acres of hardwood, mostly bottomland, and it spreads well beyond the riparian corridors. It's quite the outlier, which makes it very special. So edges are messy, and the ecoregions are much more complex than the maps I showed. The more indents and extensions that an edge has where two disparate ecosystems meet, the more diversity it's going to have. And wildlife watchers will tell you the edge is where the action is, like this prairie meeting woods. So we have a lot of edge, and interactions on the edge drive evolution. There's more diversity, fertility, and creativity where opposites meet, like this park here, where again, meadow meets trees. So now on to the big edge. To quote from the chapter Wild Dallas-Fort Worth, the great eastern deciduous forest once stretched from the Atlantic Ocean to past the Mississippi River, so dense that according to folktales, a squirrel could cross by leaping from tree to tree without ever touching the ground. The dry line that marks where the West began, where the climate shifts to semi-arid and then the arid, is roughly the 100th meridian at the eastern border of the Panhandle. But some are placing that dry line at the 98th meridian, one county west of Fort Worth, roughly at Mineral Wells, and that's the red line, because the dry line is shifting eastward due to climate change. Rainfall, after being fairly consistent across the South, starts to drop off right at the Louisiana border. So annual precipitation decreases about 1 inch for every 20 miles you go west. So the east side of DFW is quite a bit wetter than the west. This makes North Texas an ecotone, an epic edge where two desperate ecoregions merge into each other. The lush deciduous eastern deciduous forest of the east gives way to the dry western plains right here in North Texas. The Great Trinity Forest is the last bastion of that great eastern deciduous forest, and that is totally cool. So we have a lot of little edges and also a big edge. So we are all edge, and that equals diversity. But it's a diversity that you have to look closely and be aware of to see. And I hope that Wild DFW provides the education that makes that possible. Because once North Texas nature is appreciated for what it is, then people will be more motivated to preserve and care for it. The preface to Wild DFW states, quote, North Texas isn't widely known for its nature. This book aims to change that. Our nature isn't over there in remote wilderness. It's here, tucked along rivers and creeks, on the fringes of reservoirs, on rocky hilltops and floodplains, wherever development was unfeasible. But it's also in your yard, if you invite it in, end quote. Thousands of people move to North Texas every week. And they tend to dismiss our nature because it's not like it was back home. We don't have deep rivers swollen by generous rainfall like the Midwest. We have drought and deluge rivers like the Trinity and the Red. They think the land is flat. But before we filled every valley with reservoirs, we had a lot of terrain change, and it's still there near those waterways. North Texas is not a vista-driven landscape. It's far more interesting and intimate. These newbies and others are at the tyranny of their expectations. They want North Texas to be something that it's not. That doesn't work for people, and it doesn't work for land. The problem is the expectations. Let go of your expectations, and North Texas nature will absolutely open up for you. Don't get me wrong. I love jaw-dropping landscapes on an epic scale. The Rockies and Cascades, the canyons of the Southwest, the vast prairies of Kansas and Oklahoma, they absolutely knock me out. But as the opening chapter states, quote, abandon the idea that prime outdoors means majestic mountains, deep canyons, and ocean views. North Texas nature fosters a profound intimacy best experienced close up, with unfolding layers that invite lingering exploration. Nature here is not a distant vista that you admire. It's something to immerse yourself in and be a part of while it is a part of you. So let's start and take a look at where you can experience a lot of these tenets in person. We'll start with the Trinity's three major preserves, each with a variety of terrains that will satisfy anyone. Fort Worth Nature Center, Fort Worth Nature Center and Refuge is where you take newbies and out-of-state guests. 2 words, bison and alligators. It's a wild place, and it benefits from good management by the Fort Worth Park Department and lots of attention from Cross Timbers Master Naturalists and the Fort Worth chapter of NIPSOT. The refuge is located on Lake Worth, which is an impoundment of the West Fork, and it's in the northwest corner of Fort Worth. At 3,600 acres within city limits, it is one of the nation's largest city-owned nature centers. It's big enough for bison, which has its own viewing platform. Over 20 miles of hiking trails. There are at least 6 types of soil at the refuge. It's remarkable, which creates great diversity and a variety of habitats. There's medium grass prairies and savannas with reptiles, rabbits, grassland birds. There are also deep bottomland forests with lots of big birds and mammals, deeply ravined upland woods, and a vast stretch of western cross timbers and a sprawling lotus marsh. Now let's head northeast to Denton and Clear Creek Natural Heritage Area, nearly 3,000 acres of Army Corps of Engineer land managed by the city of Denton. Wetlands, riparian corridors, prairie, upland woods, Big Creek, and of course, a big old river, the Elm Fork. The attention that the Elm Fork Master Naturalists and Trinity Forks NIPSOT lavish on it brings great results. Clear Creek is halfway in between Lake Ray Roberts and Louisville Lake, on the west, mostly on the west side of the Elm Fork. So when the big rains come and Ray Roberts gets full, that water has to go somewhere, and into the Clear Creek Preserve it goes. Much like the Fort Worth Nature Center, it serves as a giant floodwater control basin. It's a wet place. The trails along Clear Creek itself are the place to experience cathedral woods with huge trees and a lush understory. So many birds you can barely hear conversation. Jaw-dropping gorgeous. Lots of swamp rabbits for you nerds out there. And the creek confluence with the Elm Fork is a very impressive thing. But you gotta hope that that log jam on the Elm Fork at Highway 360 is not backing up water, or it can be a very wet slog. It was less miles to go forward than it was to retrace our steps. So forward we went around an absolutely huge wetlands, past rafts of floating rafts of fire ants, very exciting, and frog jelly, which is frog eggs all bound up. Drop down the Elm Fork to Louisville Lake Environmental Learning Area, which everybody shortens to LELA. Over 2,600 acres, white-tailed deer, wild turkeys, river otters, nesting bald eagles, rare songbirds, and owls. It's got it all. You can even camp there. And they've been doing lots of night sky events. Totally cool to be there at night. The Bittern Marsh Trail is super popular at LELA. If you'll read the chapter and then walk it, this time notice how prior landowners' management practice shaped the land as it is now, because the Army Corps of Engineer bought land from dozens of landowners. You'll notice this patchwork of parcels. Some have young trees and some have old. Some have invasives and some do not. It's a tutorial on go back land, which is the theme of the book. There's very little virgin natural land in North Texas. It was all ranched or farmed at one point. But after World War II, people left the rural areas and started working in factories. The Blackjack Trail out of the Education Center is also real popular. Again, read the Wild DFW chapter and walk it. It'll be completely different to you. It was to me, and I'd hiked it several times. I had never noticed how the trail dips in and out of Eastern Cross Timbers and Blackland Prairie, sometimes within 10 yards. Another 10 yards, you're different. Another 10 yards, you're different. It is a talk about edge. And there's a lovely little creek there with jet black dragonflies, one of the few places to find them, damselflies, excuse me. And there's an old borrow pit it goes by that provided dirt for the lake dam, and it serves as an example of go back land gone bad. The Elm Fork now emerges from a giant outflow in the dam into a new channel. It's a fine place to bird because they're all waiting for fish stunned by the turbulent outflow. The trees will be full of great blue herons, egrets, cormorants, and others. And sometimes the human fishermen want those stunned fish too, and they compete with all those birds, and it is a great show. It's also an excellent place to just get your feet in the river. If you need something a little easier to handle, you've got Spring Creek Forest Preserve in North Garland, kind of a scaled down version of the big preserves. No wetlands or rivers, but it's got a big creek, riparian woods, upland woods, limestone prairies, a little bit of everything. It's a unique mix of trees, and some of them are huge. It was Ned Fritz bringing attention to that got this place saved. A few smaller preserves are perfect examples of their ecosystems, like Sherry Capehart Nature Preserve in Southwest Arlington, which used to be Southwest Nature Preserve. Hardly a finer example of Eastern Cross timbers around. So many skinks and lizards in the leaf fall, it makes noise. There are 2 ponds with birds and dragonflies, some quite rare. And there's a unique array of plants hardly found anywhere else, like white honeysuckle, native. There's pure stands of blackjack oaks on the cuesta top, but also a 250-year-old post oak, which is impressive. Cross Timbers master naturalists keep it looking mighty fine. Capehart takes over an entire cuesta, a geologic feature that's a direct result of those tilted layers you saw earlier. The east side is a long slope, and it has switchback trails that give you a different view every time you come to a curve. The west side drops off suddenly because of those tilted layers, as if it's praising the setting sun. And for thousands of years, indigenous people have used that western edge, which is nearly 700 feet high, which is high for North Texas, as a lookout spot. And you can almost see downtown Fort Worth from there. If you want more Rocky wonders, Cedar Ridge Preserve in Southwest Dallas County sits on a big Austin chalk escarpment. But if you look at the wet, shady area behind Cattail Pond, which we're looking at now, you can actually see the limestone segue in to the East Eagle Ford Shale. That intersection of Austin chalk and softer, very fast eroding shale is what creates the big vistas and terrain changes that area of the county is known for. You can get a much quieter experience of the Southwest Escarpment across the Farm to Market Road at Dogwood Canyon Audubon. It'll still give your legs a workout, but you will see a lot more birds and wildlife. And when you get to the top of the canyon, you get great vistas, like 6 to 8 different vistas. There's a slender escarpment of Austin chalk called the Piedmont Ridge, and that is in southeast Dallas County. There's lovely views of the northern end of the Great Trinity Forest. And from the Cyan Overlook, you can see all the way to Cedar Hill, which is across the county. It also has some gentle low woods and trails and even a Native American historical site, and they also used that overlook. The Herd Nature Sanctuary in McKinney also sits on a significant chalk escarpment with descending slopes that take you through a series of ecosystems, from fine upland woods to rich riparian woods to lowland woods. There are astounding wetlands with amazing bird life and impressive prairie restorations. Every acre of the prairie there was created from scratch. It is chock full of white-tailed deer, and they don't fear humans, so you can get very close to them. Wild DFW covers the Isle du Bois unit of Ray Roberts Lake State Park. There's at least 20 miles of trails, and what I recommend is that you use the equestrian trails to get close to nature. It's the only lake I'll swim in North Texas. Very little E. coli, nice sandy bottoms, wonderful swim beaches at both units. It's a terrific example of Eastern Cross timbers. There's vast stretches of excellent blackland prairie. There are white-tailed deer everywhere. And yet within it is a large patch of pine forest. That's nature for you. And on the other side of the lake, at the Johnson Branch, it's a whole nother set of ecosystems. It's a great place to drive around and see wild nature if you're not able to do hiking anymore. Speaking of prairie, northeast Collin County is Park Hill Prairie. The preserve itself is 300 acres, but within it is a 50-acre blackland prairie remnant. It is glorious, even magical, just like it was before settlement. The trail is short, but you can wander off trail for hours. For prairie on a big scale, check out the Fort Worth prairies on U.S. Army Corps of Engineer land on the east side of Benbrook Lake. Go 30 yards in, and it is totally frontier. I mean, the Chisholm Trail used to go right through there, and you just disappear into time. Sadly, the prairie that is in this picture no longer exists. It is now a college campus. Get a more intimate prairie experience at Tandy Hills Natural Area with hilltop prairies. It is just a whisper of soil atop hard rock, yet the wildflowers could not be more abundant. Really, it's the best displays in North Texas. But don't you trample those wildflowers or set off confetti bombs for a gender reveal party, or I tell you, the volunteers there are fiercely protective and they will get the police involved. The Great Trinity Forest takes up a big chunk of wild DFW. It's 6,000 acres, or Dallas's most neglected and greatest natural asset. I get more questions about the Great Trinity Forest than anywhere else. How can I experience it, they say. It ain't easy, and that's by design. If people can't experience a place, they're not likely to care about it, leaving it open for future development. But Wild DFW tries to help. The Trinity River Audubon Center's Forest Trail, which parallels the entrance road, is the swiftest and safest way to experience the forest with a well-maintained wide trails. The Ned and Jeannie Fritz Texas Buckeye Trails is another secure area of the forest in the Bonton communities. It made headlines for its paved stretch, which doesn't lead to the Buckeyes, and the end of it collapsed into the river because erosion happens, shockingly enough. But the natural trail segments, about 2 miles worth, are rocking once again, thanks to volunteers from the North Texas Master Naturalist and others. 10 minutes from downtown Dallas, and there's the serenity of deep woods, even deer. Ned Fritz made the area famous by leading hikes to see the Buckeye blooms every spring for decades. If you're willing to go wild, there are lots of off-trail wanderings from the Buckeye Trails into the Bonton Woods. Plans are in the works for new trails that will connect the Buckeye Trails to the White Rock Creek confluence with the Trinity River. My favorite is the Holland Trail, made by equestrians from the Texas Horse Park. It's a near perfect example of lush hardwood forest, Virginia wild rye, higher than your hips. And with luck, really takes some luck, use the Texas Explorer app, and you will be able to find the White Rock Creek confluence, which to me is the heart of the Great Trinity Forest. Goat Island Preserve in southeast Dallas County is a big chunk of the Great Trinity Forest between the river and a tall dike in an industrial district. Once past the dike, it's another reality in there. Easy to disappear into miles of trails. Huge trees, pileated woodpeckers, tremendous river views. They even have benches and picnic tables for you to enjoy them. So when water-loving birds go south for the winter, well, this is where they go. Go to the Village Creek drying beds next to River Legacy Park in Arlington in the fall and winter. It's surrounded by tall dikes, and it is like another world in there. And it is a wildlife melee in the springs in the morning because raccoons, snakes, bobcats, coyotes, everybody wants eggs for breakfast. More water birds, plus river otters, spotted gar, and more at John Bunker Sands wetlands in Seagoville, where there is a surprising amount of sunny wintertime hiking opportunities all across the cross dikes that separate the different cells of the wetlands. Tens of thousands of waterfowl and other birds overwinter at Hagerman National Wildlife Refuge on Lake Texoma on the Oklahoma border, which is the only one in the book that's out of region. There's a large shallow inlet it's based around, and it has abundant fish and crustaceans. But the refuge is a good host to its winter guests and plants vast fields of winter grains to feed them. There are free Saturday van tours, which is handy for those who don't hike anymore. There's also a self-guided auto tour. Start with either of those. At 16,000 acres, an orientation is mighty handy. But the Hagerman is great even after the water birds have gone. There are miles and miles of trails. You'll often be the only one on them. Upland woods, prairies, lake views, bog ponds, swamps, lovely stuff. There's a terrific architectural visitor center with a quarter-acre pollinator garden. A few decades ago, that visitor center was a rickety trailer on a hill, and volunteers over decades helped transform raw land into a naturalist paradise. It is just delightful. But I have to stress that Wild DFW is not a book about landscape. It's a book about people. Each chapter begins with a personal vignette, which places people in the midst of nature, enjoying it and preserving it. After all, we are a part of nature. All throughout the book, there are stories about people like you, people who love plants, animals, insects, reptiles, birds, mammals, and so much more that they learn everything about them. I consulted with a lot of professional experts, including from Brit, but I sure learned a lot from these quote unquote amateurs. You'll discover people in this book who found deep personal healing from loss and change, from autism and ADD, from anxiety and physical ailments through nature. Nature is more than outdoor recreation. It is essential for our physical and mental well-being and should be funded that way. So this book is an extended love letter to you, to all who aid nature. I tell people at my talks that you are the type of people who plant trees you'll never sit under the shade of. Your altruism absolutely floors me. As the book states, It is indeed a gift to learn about nature, but to help preserve it is true legacy. Please see the Wild DFW website and social media as a resource for you to get to know North Texas nature. The website has a page on it for the photographers you've been watching. Everybody mentions in the book has a clickable link on the community page. I have a newsletter, but it's fairly irregular. And I post about all the nonprofit groups in the book, including Brit, on social media, Wild DFW, Facebook and Instagram. And it creates a wonderful snapshot of the nature community that we are in. I hope that I have enthused you about North Texas nature. Please spread the word about all of this and Wild DFW. I'm especially looking for businesses and municipalities to talk to next year. I want to take the gospel of nature tourism and the benefits of preserving nature to beyond the choir. Thank you for your time and attention. Here is what I'm into next. In fact, writing for the next 2 weeks is the biography of Texas's most important environmentalist, Ned Fritz. He kept the Trinity River from being turned into a barge canal from East Fort Worth to the Gulf. He created 36,000 acres of national wilderness in East Texas. He started the Texas Land Trust movement, and he started 2 of Texas's most important eco groups, Texas Conservation Alliance and Texas Land Conservancy, and so much more. 200,000 acres in total is what Ned Fritz is responsible for preserving. And ladies, you owe that lady in pink on the left your ability to have credit in your own name. She was part of that women's group that made that happen. I still talk about it, poison ivy to anyone, anywhere. People are needlessly mean to the ranch. I'm hoping that Timber Press will say yes to a redo of Itchy Business. So I'm happy to answer questions. This is the end of my dog and pony show.
If anyone would like to answer questions, feel free to unmute, or if you put anything in the chat, I'm happy to read them all.
Oh, thanks for the applause. Appreciate that, Gloria. I kind of talk like a fire hose.
Very, very interesting, though. Well, I guess I have one question is, where can we get Wild DFW?
You can go to wild-dfw.com, and there's a buy page where you can find all of the places that it's sold, including independent bookstores. So in Fort Worth, it's at Monkey and Dog Books, which is a charming bookstore off of West 7th. It's at all of the Barnes and Nobles. I believe it's still on a pretty good display rank. It's at your local REIs and your Patagonias, if you have a Patagonia in Fort Worth. And then it's also at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and Bookstore online, or Bookshop online, which is an independent online bookstore.
Fantastic. We had one from the chat, which was, thanks, Amy, great talk. I love the cover art. Can you tell us a bit about the art and the artist?
That is one of your gals in Fort Worth. That is Mariel Guzman. And she is a muralist. She also has a room at Meow Wolf in Grapevine.
Oh, fun.
If you go around Southside in Fort Worth, you'll see lots and lots of her murals over there. I scored with her. My cover is more colorful than Wild Miami. She was great. And I want to give a shout out to Sarah Crum, who is the finest layout artist at Timber Press, which is known for their beautiful layout. And she did the layout on Wild DFW, spent a couple extra months on it. And I am really grateful for her talent.
No, it's beautiful.
Yeah, she did great. Yeah.
Did we have any other questions for Miss Martin?
I sure wish I could have been there today. It would have been great to see everybody.
Yes, no, we really appreciate that you were still able to come to us virtually and let us know about Wild DFW.
Yeah. Fort Worth has, I'm a lifelong Dallasite, and I had so much fun getting to know the nature in Tarrant County. And it was challenging. It was very challenging. And
Mhm.
I am grateful to people like Suzanne Tuttle and Rob Denkhaus and Don Young and Charlie Amos for patiently teaching me about nature in Tarrant County. And now I'm a big fan. Big.
Amy, can
Yes,
you
sir.
hear me?
Yes.
What?
Go ahead.
Hey, Amy, this is Bob O'Kennon. Good to
Hi,
see you
Bob.
again.
Botany Bob. Also in the book.
Thank you. I wanted to, Amy sent us about a dozen of these beautiful books.
Oh,
She sent them to Barney and me, and we've given them to Britt, and they're for sale. We have them right up here in our bookshop, and they are gorgeous,
I'm
beautiful
so
books.
excited. I'll put that
Oh,
on my
awesome.
list. Yay.
Thanks, Amy. That was wonderful.
Oh, you're wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, Botany Bob has a page in Wild DFW.
Oh, we love that.
Yeah.
I got a question.
Oh, it sounds like we have another question.
I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
I live near River Legacy Park in Arlington,
Mm-hmm.
and there is the Village Creek wetlands right next door where a lot of migratory waterfowl come in there.
Yes.
I don't know if you've been there, but I've been told, and I saw what I thought were nutria and perhaps beaver or both. Can you tell me, are those nutria?
The photographers who have photographed the Village Creek drying beds which is a chapter in Wild DFW, they only see nutria. They don't see any beavers there at all. And it could use some beavers because they got too many trees at the drying beds. I did that drying beds with Charlie Amos of the Fort Worth Audubon. I learned so much about birds from him. And so the chapter is a lovely little tutorial on water birds and wading birds and such. And then the second half of that chapter looks at the River Legacy Nature Center with Zachary Chapman.
I'll be doing your book review for Jay Britt, so I look forward to reading that chapter.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a very fun one to do. When I do talks, most people have never been there. And believe me, they're going there now. And I met a girl the other day, a woman, and she said that she works for the water department and has been lobbying real hard to try to get a more consistent level of water in the drying beds. They've been taking water out and shipping it off to a golf course. And
I grew up in the Central Flyway in Kansas,
yeah.
but there are a lot of migratory birds there I've never seen before. It's really it kind of compares to Port Aransas, where most of those birds overwinter.
People don't know there's some really vast wetlands in Kansas that support a lot of birds. And right now in Dallas and probably in Fort Worth, we're undergoing the invasion of the limpkins. Yes. I'm not sure why, but limpkins are everywhere right now.
Mhm.
Funny little birds.
We had one more question from the chat. Amy, are you familiar with the Sopak Trail in Dallas that connects White Rock that connects to White Rock Lake? I think you might like it.
Yes, I tend not to do paved trails.
Okay.
Because they are hot in the summer and nature is at such a distance. But I do the Trinity Forest Trail is part of the chapter with Trinity River Audubon. And I like that one because it takes you right. Oh, and I've done Sopak with a friend of mine who lives off of it. But I like the Trinity Forest Trail for a paved trail because it takes you over the Trinity River, and it's very rare that you're able to actually get on top of the river and look down upon it. Very fascinating. And then another stretch of it goes really deep into the forest. And if you're one of those people that doesn't want to get nature on you, but you'd like to get deep into it, that's an opportunity to experience the Great Trinity Forest without having to worry about bugs and poison ivy and that kind of thing. So, yeah, yeah. But as long as you get outside, get some good air, get out, enjoy.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah, and I'm so proud of the Tarrant Regional Water District. Man, do they make trails? Whew,
Mm.
yeah.
Okay, well, I think that's all we have from the chat. If
Alright.
anybody had anything last minute or we got a lot of great thank yous and a lot of fantastic presentation. So
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm starting to get this one down.
yeah.
And there's my Dillo.
Yes, no. I know, I didn't realize that they could walk across. That's bananas.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
All right, well, thank you guys so much for coming to our lunchtime lecture. We will be having our next lunchtime lecture in November on the 7th. So please join us again then.